The palace of the Alien Mistress was built from black stone that shimmered like glass under the twin moons. Inside the grand hall, the walls were carved with glowing patterns, and golden statues lined the path to her private chamber. She was known across the stars as a woman of power, feared by her enemies and obeyed by her servants. But tonight, she had set a trap, not for her foes, but for the human bodyguard she had recently hired. The human's name was Daniel. He had been brought from a distant colony, a soldier who lost everything in war. His home was gone, his family scattered, and his future uncertain. When the mistress offered him work as her guard, he accepted without hesitation. It was a chance to live again, even if it meant protecting someone who was more alien than he could ever imagine. The mistress was curious about him. Humans were rare in her court. Most aliens thought them weak, fragile, and too emotional. But there were whispers about human courage. Whispers that made her want to test if the stories were true. She did not trust easily, and loyalty was more precious to her than any jewel. So she devised a plan. Inside her chamber, she left treasures scattered across the room. Gold coins from 100 worlds, crystal stones that pulsed with inner light, and necklaces woven with threads of starlight. At the center stood a tall chest filled with glowing pearls that could buy an entire planet. To anyone who had lived in poverty, the sight was enough to weaken the knees. Daniel entered the chamber, his boots echoing on the polished floor. The door closed behind him, leaving him alone with wealth beyond his wildest dreams. His eyes widened at first, the lights of the jewels reflecting in his pupils. For a long moment he stood still, his breath heavy. His hand twitched as if wanting to reach out, but he stopped himself. The mistress watched from behind a hidden crystal screen. Her sharp eyes studied every small movement. She remembered the last guard she tested, an armored beast from a warrior race. He had fallen to greed within minutes, pocketing a single coin, and she had ordered him cast out into the night. This human, though, was different. His gaze did not linger on the treasure for long. Instead, he turned his head, scanning the shadows. Checking the corners, his hand went to the hilt of his blade, not toward the shining pearls. Daniel whispered under his breath, "Too quiet." His soldier's instincts told him something was wrong. He stepped between the scattered coins, his back straight, his eyes sharp. He walked past the chest of pearls without touching them. Stopping near the balcony where the curtains swayed in the night wind, he stood guard, as if the treasure truly belonged to him. The mistress felt her chest tighten. Her plan was simple, yet his reaction was unexpected. Most men would have bent under the weight of temptation, but Daniel showed no interest in stealing. Instead, he seemed ready to defend. She leaned closer to the screen, her alien eyes glowing faintly in the dark. Minutes passed, and the chamber grew colder. Daniel did not move from his post. He kept watching, his hand on his sword, his jaw set. His thoughts were heavy. He remembered the hunger in his younger days, the empty bowls, the long nights under ruined roofs. A handful of those jewels could change everything, yet his honor chained him in place, stronger than hunger, stronger than desire. The mistress almost smiled, but she stopped herself. The test was not over. She whispered into the small device on her wrist, summoning shadows into the hall. The true measure of loyalty was not only in resisting greed, but also in facing danger for something that was not his. Daniel heard the faint scrape of movement. His blade came free with a sharp hiss, his eyes narrowed, and his body shifted into battle stance. He had not touched a single jewel, yet he was, ready to spill blood to protect them. The mistress's cold heart stirred. For the first time in many years, she felt curiosity grow into something stronger. She leaned against the crystal screen, watching closely, waiting to see if the human would stand or fall when the real test began. The chamber filled with silence, and in that silence, Daniel stood tall like a soldier carved from stone, surrounded by riches he could not take, shadowed by dangers he could not see. And yet, he did not waver. The mistress whispered softly, almost to herself, "Perhaps the stories about humans are true. The alien mistress sat hidden behind her crystal screen. Her sharp eyes glowed in the dim light. Never, leaving the human who stood in her chamber. She had tested many guards before, but none had lasted this long. Most had betrayed themselves quickly, reaching for her treasure. Daniel had not. Instead of taking, he had chosen to guard, and that was something she had not seen in many years. She leaned back on her silver throne, her long fingers tapping against the armrest. Her thoughts ran deep. She was a woman of wealth and fear. Many bowed to her, many obeyed her, but none she trusted. To her, trust was a jewel rarer than any diamond, and loyalty was a weapon sharper than any blade. Tonight she wanted to know if this human had either. Daniel stood still, his back straight, his eyes moving across every corner of the room. The glowing pearls and golden statues no longer mattered to him. His training as a soldier had taken control. He knew a trap when he saw one, and the silence in this chamber was too heavy to ignore. He did not know the mistress was watching him, but he felt the weight of unseen eyes. The curtains moved again, whispering in the cold night air. Daniel's grip tightened on his sword. He had fought in ruined cities, on broken battlefields, and in dark alleys where death waited in the shadows. This palace chamber was no different. Every space was a battlefield if one had the eyes to see. The mistress tilted her head, studying him. He looked strong but also weary. His movements showed discipline, yet his eyes carried old scars. She had chosen him because she thought a poor human would break faster than a proud alien warrior. But the longer she watched, the more she saw. Something rare, something steady. A memory touched her mind. The last bodyguard she had tested. A towering reptilian warrior. He had lasted only minutes before slipping a golden ring into his armor. She had smiled coldly then. For greed was predictable. It was easy to punish betrayal. What she could not understand was loyalty, because she had seen it only in stories. Daniel shifted his stance, stepping closer to the chest of pearls. His shadow fell over the glowing jewels. His hand brushed against the edge of the chest, but he did not open it. Instead, he turned away, positioning himself between the treasure and the balcony. If someone entered, they would face him first. The mistress's lips curved slightly, almost a smile, but not quite. Her mind whispered questions. Why would a man with nothing choose to guard what was not his? Why did he not take a single coin, when even one could buy him food, freedom, maybe even a small home? She searched his face for the answer, but his eyes remained hard, unreadable. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours. The palace outside was silent. The guards walked the halls. The stars shone over the city. But inside this chamber, only Daniel's steady breathing broke the stillness. His body was calm, but his mind was sharp. He kept waiting as if danger could rise from the very floor. Then faint footsteps echoed down the hall. Daniel turned his head slightly. His ears caught the sound before it reached the chamber. He moved, closer to the treasure, standing tall. His blade gleamed faintly as he loosened it in its sheath. The mistress's heart gave a small, strange beat. He was ready again, not for greed but for duty. She had planned this, yet watching him stirred something inside her chest. She had seen countless guards fight for pay, fight for glory, or fight for survival. But this human seemed to fight for something invisible. The door creaked. Shadows flickered across the floor. Daniel's eyes narrowed, his shoulders stiffened. The mistress leaned forward, her pulse quickening. She had not felt excitement like this in years. Her test was reaching its next stage, and she wanted to see how far he could go. The footsteps stopped, silence again. Daniel took one step toward the noise, his voice low but steady. "Show yourself." His hand rested on the hilt of his sword, not trembling, not weak. His voice echoed through the chamber, calm but filled with warning. The mistress almost laughed softly. He had courage, too. That was unexpected. Humans were supposed to be fragile, yet here he was, guarding treasure that was not his, facing enemies he could not see. She realized then that perhaps her test was not only for him, but for herself as well. Was she ready to believe in someone's loyalty? Was she ready to trust? Her eyes narrowed, and she whispered into her wrist device, "Begin." The real test would start now. The chamber grew darker as the twin moons slid behind heavy clouds. Daniel stood silent, his hand steady on the hilt of his blade. His eyes scanned the curtains and corners. The treasure sparkled faintly, glowing like fireflies in the shadows. For a moment the room felt calm, too calm. Then from the walls came the faint scrape of stone. Daniel's breath slowed. He recognized the sound. Intruders. It was not the clumsy step of a servant or the patrol of a guard. It was careful, slow, and dangerous. He stepped forward, placing his body between the treasure and the sound. His boots pressed against the polished floor, his muscles tight. His soldier's instincts roared inside him. From her hidden screen, the mistress watched with sharp eyes. She had called for the test, but now she felt her heart rise in her chest. This was no staged game anymore. The intruders she had arranged were not loyal servants, but real thieves who had been hunting her wealth for months. They had chosen this night, and unknowingly, her human stood in their path. The wall panel slid open with a low hiss. 3 figures slipped inside. Their bodies were wrapped in dark cloth, their faces hidden. In their hands were alien blades that glimmered with red light. They moved like hunters, fast and quiet. Their eyes locked on the chest of pearls. Daniel stepped forward, his voice hard. "You shouldn't be here." His words echoed across the chamber. The thieves froze for a breath, then laughed softly. One of them sneered. "A human guard? That is all she trusts now." The mistress's lips tightened. She leaned forward, wanting to see how he would react. Daniel's face did not move. His jaw was set, his eyes sharp. He lifted his blade, the steel catching the glow of the jewels. The thieves spread out, one to the left, one to the right, and one straight ahead. They thought to trap him. Daniel shifted his stance. He had faced worse odds before. He remembered the burning cities, the enemies who surrounded him. He had survived then. He would survive now. The first thief lunged with his red blade. Daniel sidestepped and struck. The clash rang like thunder. Sparks burst in the dark. The human sword was old, a simple piece of steel, but in his hand it moved with deadly precision. He cut low, forcing the thief back. The second thief leapt from the side. Daniel twisted, blocking with a sharp clang. His arms shook, but he did not yield. He shoved the attacker back, his boots sliding across the floor. His heart pounded, yet his eyes never left the enemy. The mistress gripped her throne tightly. Her test had become more dangerous than she planned. She saw blood shine on Daniel's arm where the red blade had grazed him, but he did not falter. Instead, he stood taller, as if pain gave him strength. The third thief charged straight at the chest of pearls. His hands stretched greedily. Daniel's eyes flashed. With a roar, he spun and slammed his blade across the thief's path. The jewels rattled but remained untouched. The thief fell back. With a curse, his weapon clattering against the floor, Daniel breathed heavily. His body ached, but his stance was firm. "You won't touch them," he said. His voice was not loud, but it carried power. The thieves regrouped, circling him again. This time they moved faster, striking together. Steel met fire. Daniel's blade clashed again and again. His arms burned, his chest heaved, but he fought like a man guarding his own soul. The mistress's alien eyes widened. She had seen warriors fight for pay. She had seen killers fight for glory. But this human fought for something else. He did not own the treasure, yet he defended it as though it was sacred. The battle raged in the chamber. Statues cracked, coins scattered, sparks lit the floor. Daniel bled from his shoulder, his cheek, his hands, yet he did not fall. Every strike he made was filled with stubborn loyalty. His boots never crossed toward the jewels, only away, always keeping himself between treasure and thieves. One thief snarled in frustration. "Why defend what isn't yours?" he shouted. Daniel's answer came with another strike of steel. "Because it's my duty." The words cut deeper than any blade. The mistress heard them and felt her chest tighten. Her eyes burned, but she did not look away. Finally, with a last clash, Daniel drove his sword into the ground before him. His body shook. His blood dripped, But the thieves backed away. Their eyes narrowed, their pride broken. They hissed curses and slipped back into the night through the wall panel. Silence fell again. Daniel stood breathing hard, his sword lowered, his body trembled. He glanced at the treasure untouched, safe. His lips tightened and he whispered, "Still standing." Behind the screen, the mistress's hand trembled against her lips. Her test had revealed more than she expected. The human had not only resisted temptation, he had fought to protect what was not his. He had shed blood for her wealth without asking for a coin. For the first time in many years, the alien mistress felt something stir deep within her heart, something she had almost forgotten. Respect. The chamber stank of sweat and smoke. Coins were scattered across the floor, some crushed beneath heavy boots. Daniel stood in the middle of it all, his sword slick with blood, his chest rising and falling like a drum. His arm burned from a deep cut, yet he kept his grip strong. He knew the battle was not over. The panel in the wall opened again and more shadows poured through. This time they were not 3, but 5. Their weapons gleamed with red fire, sharper and brighter than before. They moved with deadly purpose, faster, hungrier, their eyes locked not only on the treasure but also on the human who blocked their way. From her hidden seat, the mistress felt her throat tighten. She had expected thieves, but not this many. She had thought the human might resist. But she had not imagined him facing an army, still she did not move to stop it. Her heart commanded her to see the truth, to see what he would do when pressed to the edge of life. Daniel steadied himself. His mind whispered of pain, but his body answered with resolve. He lifted his sword high, the simple steel blade catching the glow of alien fire. His voice cut the silence. "If you want them, you'll have to go through me." The thieves laughed, a cruel sound that echoed through the chamber. "One human against us." One hissed, "You will break like all the others." But Daniel did not break. He stepped forward, his boots firm against the floor, his eyes narrowed, his spirit unshaken. The first 2 rushed at him together, their red blades slashing. Like lightning, Daniel swung his steel sword in a wide arc. Sparks burst as metal struck fire. His arms shook, but his feet did not move. He held the line, blocking every strike, driving them back one step at a time. The third thief slipped behind him, aiming for his back. Daniel felt the rush of air. He spun, his sword flashing. Their blades met with a crash that rattled the statues. The thief staggered, shocked by the force of a human's strength. Daniel pressed forward, his strike nearly cutting the weapon from the thief's hand. The mistress's eyes widened, her heart pounded. She had seen warriors trained for years falter under such pressure. Yet this human, with his torn clothes and bleeding hands, fought like a storm. His sword moved not with elegance but with sheer will. Each swing carried the weight of survival, of duty, of something greater than greed. The 4th and 5th thieves circled closer. One hurled a small device. It burst into flame at Daniel's feet. Fire roared up, smoke filling the chamber. Daniel coughed, his eyes burning. Yet even in the choking dark, he stood firm. His sword cut through the smoke, his voice hoarse but steady. "I won't fall." The battle turned fierce. Steel against fire, shadow against flesh. Daniel's body screamed with pain. His shoulders ached, his breath came heavy. But inside, something stronger pushed him forward. He remembered faces of those he once fought beside. Soldiers who had trusted him. He remembered the empty streets of his ruined home, the hunger, the cold. He swore he would never betray trust again, not even for jewels brighter than the stars. With a cry, he struck hard. His blade smashed against the red weapon of the nearest thief, breaking it in half. The thief stumbled, fear flashing in his eyes. Daniel stepped past him, cutting low, forcing the others to retreat. The chamber echoed with the clash. Statues shattered, curtains burned, the golden coins melted under fire. Yet Daniel's body did not fall. He was battered, cut, and bruised, but his will was like iron. The mistress clutched the edge of her throne. Her alien heart had always been cold, but now it burned with something fierce admiration. She could not look away from him. She felt as if she were watching not a servant, but a warrior born from fire itself. The thieves, now fewer, hesitated. They had come for easy treasure, but instead found a human who fought as if the treasure were his very soul. Their courage wavered. Their eyes darted toward the door. Toward escape. Daniel saw it. His voice rang out, "Leave, while you still can." The thieves hissed in anger, but their pride was broken. One by one they slipped back into the shadows, vanishing into the night. The chamber fell silent again. Only the crackle of dying fire and the sound of Daniel's heavy breath remained. He lowered his sword slowly, his arm trembling, his knees nearly buckled. But he forced himself to stand. The jewels were safe, untouched. From her screen the mistress rose for the first time. Her body moved, not with command, but with instinct. Her eyes glistened with something rare. She whispered to herself, "This human. He is not like the others." Daniel wiped blood from his cheek. His chest heaved, but his eyes still burned with focus. He turned once more toward the treasure, standing guard even after the battle was done, as if danger might return at any second. And in that moment, the mistress knew. The true clash was not steel against fire, but loyalty against greed, and the human had won. The chamber was quiet after the storm of battle. Smoke drifted across the floor. Broken statues lay in pieces, and scattered jewels glittered like fallen stars. Daniel stood in the center, his sword lowered but still firm in his grip. His body trembled with exhaustion. Cuts lined his arms, and blood marked his cheek. Yet his eyes stayed sharp, watching for danger. For a long moment he thought he was alone again. The thieves were gone, the fire dying. Only the cold wind whispered through the torn curtains. But then, from the far side of the chamber, the crystal wall shifted. A soft hum filled the air, and the mistress stepped out from the shadows. She was dressed in flowing silver robes that glowed faintly in the moonlight. Her tall frame moved with grace, her eyes burning with alien light. The jewels on her crown shone brighter than the treasure on the floor. For the first time, Daniel saw her without guards or servants. She stood before him, not as a distant ruler, but as a woman watching him closely. Daniel stiffened, his sword lifting slightly. He had not known she was near. His voice came out low, rough from battle. "My lady," he said, bowing his head. Blood dripped onto the polished floor. He felt ashamed that he had not kept the chamber untouched, that some coins were scattered, some statues broken. The mistress studied him in silence. Her eyes lingered on his wounds, on the dirt and blood covering his uniform, on the way his shoulders sagged from exhaustion. She remembered how others before him had fallen so easily, greedy and weak. Yet this human had fought with fire in his veins, not for reward, not for pride, but for something else she could not name. Finally she spoke, her voice soft but cutting through the silence like a blade. "You bleed, yet the treasure is safe." Her words carried both surprise and weight. Daniel looked at the floor, his jaw tight. "I could not protect it all," he said, his tone heavy. "Some things were damaged. I failed you." The mistress felt her chest tighten. His words struck her in a way she did not expect. Most guards would boast after such a fight, claiming victory, demanding reward. But this human lowered his head in shame, as if the scattered coins mattered more than his blood. She stepped closer, the soft glow of her robe brushing against the floor. "You call this failure?" she whispered. "When you stood against fire and shadow alone." Her hand, pale and slender, reached out slowly. For the first time in years, she touched someone not with command, but with respect. She placed her fingers lightly against his chin and lifted. His face, his eyes, tired yet unbroken, met hers. Daniel froze. He had expected anger or dismissal. Instead, he saw something else in her gaze, not cold calculation, but warmth hidden beneath steel. His throat tightened. He had no words, only silence. The mistress studied him for another long moment, then pulled her hand back. Her voice grew stronger, echoing through the chamber. "No one has ever stood where you stand now," she declared. "No one has resisted greed, fought through blood, and still bowed with humility." Daniel's eyes flickered with confusion. He did not understand why she praised him. He thought he had simply done his duty. His lips parted. "I only did what was right," he said quietly. The mistress almost smiled, though it was faint and fleeting. "And that is why you are different," she replied. Her gaze swept across the ruined chamber, the broken gold, the smoke. "Others crave wealth, others crave power. But you protect without claim. You guard what you do not own." She turned slowly, her silver robe flowing behind her. She walked toward the chest of pearls, her hand brushed across the glowing jewels. But her eyes never left Daniel. "These treasures were never my true test," she confessed. "They are nothing compared to what I sought." Daniel blinked, confusion deepening. His hand tightened on his sword, though not in threat. "What do you mean?" he asked. His voice was rough, but steady. The mistress faced him fully, her alien eyes gleaming. "I was searching for loyalty," she said. "Something rarer than any gem. Something I could not buy with all the gold in this chamber." She stepped closer, her voice lowering. "And tonight, you showed me that it exists inside you." Daniel stood frozen. His chest rose and fell, his mind replaying the battle, the blood, the danger. He had not thought of it as loyalty, only survival, only duty. Yet hearing her speak, something inside him shifted. For the first time since he had entered her service, he felt not like a tool, not like a hired guard, but like a man seen. His lips pressed together and he bowed again, deeper than before. "Then I am honored, my lady," he said. The mistress's heart stirred with strange warmth. A rare smile curved her lips. She whispered, almost too soft for him to hear, "Perhaps I am the one who is honored." The silence that followed was not cold, but alive. For the first time, the mistress and the human stood not as ruler and guard, but as two souls bound by something invisible, stronger than wealth, stronger than fear. The chamber still smelled of smoke and blood. The fire was gone, the jewels were safe, and Daniel stood quietly with his sword lowered. His body ached from wounds, but his eyes stayed sharp, waiting for orders. The mistress moved slowly across the floor, her silver robe sweeping over scattered coins. Her gaze was not on the treasure, but on him. For a long time she said nothing. Daniel kept his head bowed. He thought she might dismiss him, perhaps even punish him for the damage left behind. Yet when she spoke, her voice carried not anger, but something softer. "Do you know why I left my treasures unguarded?" she asked. Her tone was calm, but there was weight in every word. Daniel lifted his eyes slightly, confusion crossing his face. "To test me, my lady," he answered, his voice rough. "To see if I would steal." The mistress nodded slowly, her alien eyes glowing faintly. "Yes, but it was more than that," she said. She touched a broken statue, running her fingers along its cracked surface. "Wealth is easy to guard, it can be replaced, but trust cannot be bought." "I wanted to know if loyalty still existed in this universe." Daniel frowned. His heart beat heavy in his chest. He had seen betrayal many times before. Soldiers who sold secrets, allies who turned for survival. He understood her words more than he wished. "And you thought a human could not resist temptation," he said quietly. Her lips curved in a faint smile. "No, I thought no one could," she replied. "I tested warriors stronger than you, men richer, women fiercer. All of them failed. They touched the jewels, they stole, they betrayed, but you did not." Daniel shifted uneasily. He did not see himself as special. To him, he had simply done his duty. "I only guarded what was in my care," he said. His voice carried shame. "Even then, I could not protect it all." His eyes lowered to the cracked floors, the scattered pearls. The mistress stepped closer, her presence filling the space. Her voice grew firm. "You misunderstand, human," she said. "The test was never about the gold, not the pearls, not these lifeless stones. They were bait. Nothing more. The true treasure I sought was a soul that could not be bought." Her words struck Daniel deep. He looked at her, his breath caught in his chest. A soul that could not be bought. He had heard such a phrase once long ago, spoken by his father before the war took him. It felt strange to hear it now, in the mouth of an alien noblewoman. The mistress's eyes softened as she studied him. "I have lived surrounded by liars and thieves," she confessed. "Every servant bows with a smile, but their hearts hold daggers. Every warrior fights with pride, but their loyalty ends with the promise of gold. Do you know what it is like to rule without trust?" Daniel swallowed, his throat tight. He thought of the war, of commanders who abandoned their men, of friends who sold rations for coins. He nodded once. "Yes," he said simply. The mistress tilted her head, her silver crown catching the faint light. "Then you understand why I had to know?" she whispered. "If even one soul could stand firm, if even one could guard not for wealth but for honor, perhaps I could believe again." Daniel stared at her, his chest heavy. He felt the weight of her words press against him. For the first time, he saw not just a mistress of wealth and power, but a lonely figure who had been betrayed too many times, a woman who hid her wounds behind crowns and treasure. His voice was low, steady. "I did not stand for riches," he said. "I stood because you trusted me with the task. That was enough." The mistress's breath caught. Her heart trembled in her chest. For years she had thought loyalty was a myth, a story told to children. Yet here was a human, bloodied and tired, saying words that reached deeper than any blade. She stepped even closer, her eyes locked on his. "Do you realize what you have done tonight?" she asked. Daniel blinked, shaking his head slightly. "No, my lady," he said. "Only that I'm still alive." A soft laugh escaped her lips, light but real. "You have given me proof," she said, "that loyalty exists, that it breathes, that it stands before me now." Daniel felt heat rise in his chest, not pride, but something quieter, something heavier. He bowed once more, deeper, his voice firm. "Then I will keep standing as long as you need me." The mistress's hand rose. For a moment she almost touched him again, but she pulled back. Her voice lowered, carrying both strength and vulnerability. "You are not like the others, Daniel. You may be human, fragile, small in their eyes, but to me, you are the rarest treasure in this chamber." The silence stretched, heavy and alive. The jewels around them gleamed, forgotten. For the first time in her long reign, the mistress felt something she had never known. Hope. The night outside. The palace was silent. The stars burned like cold fire in the sky. But inside the chamber the air still felt heavy. Daniel stood tall, though his body begged for rest. His sword hung by his side, the blade chipped, his clothes torn, his blood marked the floor, yet his eyes held the same steady fire. He had not broken. The mistress stood before him, her silver robe glowing faintly. Her gaze lingered on him as if trying to see deeper than flesh, deeper than scars. For years she had been surrounded by gold and power, but none of it gave her peace. Now, in the presence of a wounded human, she felt something stronger than wealth. Slowly she raised her hand, her voice carried across the ruined chamber. "Daniel," she said, calling his name for the first time. It was strange to hear her lips form it. He looked up sharply, surprised. "My lady," he answered, bowing his head. "You think you have failed me?" she said. "Because the statues are broken, the coins scattered, and the jewels burned. But you are wrong." Her steps echoed softly as she moved closer. "You have given me something no jewel could buy. You gave me loyalty, and you bled to prove it." Daniel's chest tightened. He shook his head. "I only did my duty," he whispered. His voice was rough, filled with exhaustion. But the mistress's eyes did not waver. She stopped just before him, her presence filling the space between them. "You do not understand," she said firmly. "In this galaxy, duty bends, loyalty breaks, promises turn to ash, but you—" Her voice softened. "You stood even when no one watched, even when you thought it was hopeless. You stood for me." Her words sank into him. Deeper than any wound, Daniel felt his knees weaken, not from pain but from the weight of her truth. He bowed lower, pressing his hand to his chest. "Then I will keep standing," he said. As long as I breathe. The mistress felt her chest tremble. Her alien heart had always been cold, armored by years of betrayal. But now cracks formed in that armor. She reached out again, this time not stopping. Her hand rested gently on his shoulder. Her touch was light, yet it carried more power than any crown. You are not just my guard anymore, she whispered. You are my protector, my shield, my chosen. Daniel froze. His breath caught. His mind tried to deny it, yet his heart felt the weight of her words. Chosen, he repeated softly. The mistress nodded, her eyes glowing. With quiet fire, yes, chosen, not because of strength, not because of skill, but because of your soul. It cannot be bought, it cannot be shaken. She turned slowly, her voice rising. Let it be known from this night forward, the human is my most trusted, my companion, the one I will stand beside. The words rang through the chamber, echoing like a command across stone. Daniel's heart pounded. He had expected nothing but a servant's place, yet now she placed him above treasure, above warriors, above even her closest court. He whispered, My lady, I am unworthy. But she only smiled faintly, for the first time in many years. That is why you are, she said softly. Outside the chamber, word spread quickly. Servants whispered, guards murmured. The alien mistress, cold and untouchable, had raised a human above all. The court would not believe it, yet they would see it with their own eyes. Daniel did not care for whispers, he cared only for the vow in his chest. He looked at her not as a ruler, but as someone who had seen him, truly seen him. His voice was steady. Then I will not fail you. The mistress's gaze softened. She looked at the jewels scattered across the floor, shining yet meaningless, and then at Daniel, bloodied yet unbroken. For the first time she knew the truth. Wealth was not her strength, loyalty was, and she had found it in him. A silence settled over them, not heavy, but alive. The fire had burned out. The chamber was ruined. But between them, something new had been born. Not forged from gold, but from trust. The mistress stepped back slightly, her voice strong once more. Rise, Daniel. You are no longer just a bodyguard. You are the treasure I cannot replace. He lifted his head, his eyes meeting hers, and for the first time, the human did not bow in fear or shame. He bowed in honor with pride that burned brighter than jewels. And the mistress, who had once thought herself surrounded only by shadows, allowed herself a small, true smile, for she had discovered the rarest wealth in all the galaxy. Not pearls, not gold, not power, but a bond beyond wealth.